Hello, everybody. I am Markos. I'm here with Kerry. Welcome to this week's edition of Daily Coast, The Brief, our weekly show about politics. Today, we are going about Pennsylvania. If you've been tuning in these last couple of weeks, we've been talking to on-the-ground organizers in key 2022 states that will make the difference, whether it's the Senate race, the control of the Senate after 2022, or even races where there is implications for the 2024 presidential election. And since these are all battleground states, we visited with North Carolina, with Michigan, today Pennsylvania. Clearly, everything has 2024 connotations. But as we've been discovering, as we talk to these on-the-ground organizers, there's also a lot at stake at the state level. So, Kerry, welcome back. So happy to see you. I'm glad you and your family are back and healthy and back to the land of the living.
It's good to be back. I must say, it's good to be back. We were down for a couple of weeks with some nasty something. It wasn't COVID. We took a lot of tests, but whatever it was not enjoyable. I'll say that. So, but anyway, here I am. I'm back. I'm ready to go. I'm happy to be taking part. So
when you see anti-vaxxers, and not to distract from the core focus of the show, we'll get to that in a second, but when anti-vaxxers say things like COVID is no worse than the flu, it makes me wonder if they've had the flu, because it's freaking miserable.
It is miserable. It can be terrible. I mean, we didn't even have the flu. We had something respiratory, but they tested us for the flu. We just got all sorts of tests, and whatever it was nasty. I mean, it was rough go. We were all down. So anyway, but here we are. I'm back. Family's running, I'd say 90%. We'll take that for now. So
that's awesome. Welcome. So today we're going to be talking about Pennsylvania. And so let me sort of lay a little bit, provide a little context about Pennsylvania. We all know it's a battleground state. We all know it's toughly contested every year. I think people may not realize how closely contested it is and just how dramatic the Democratic victory in 2020 was in Pennsylvania. Because it blew Kerry, I'm going to admit it. When I was digging through some numbers in preparation for the show, even I hadn't realized just how dramatic our victory in Pennsylvania was. So here's sort of the lay of the land. So Donald Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016 by 44,000 votes. That was a margin of 0.7%. That one hurt. Remember, it hurt. Still too soon.
There were a lot of things that hurt in 2016, but yeah, Pennsylvania hurt.
Joe Biden won the state by 80,555 votes in 2020, 1.2%, right? Razor thin. Here's the crazy part, though. Trump got 407,000 more votes in 2020 than he did in 2016. He almost 500,000 more votes from 2016 to 2017. That was over 15% increase in his base of support. So do you
think any of those voters were dead people? Do you think they were? Did he?
Oh, are we going to start asking for recounts?
Is that a case of major fraud or no? I'm kidding. I'm joking.
So, I mean, obviously, I still don't understand how people could watch Donald Trump for 4 years and go, yeah, now I'm going to vote for the first time, and I'm going to vote for Donald Trump.
That's my dude.
I still can't understand that. But that said, 15% increase after he won in 2016. In a normal conventional year, that would have been enough for Donald Trump to win. And we told the story. It's the exact same story in Georgia, in Michigan, in Arizona, right? Where Donald Trump gets 15-20% more votes from 2016 to 2020, and yet somehow Democrats win because we turned out even more new voters. And in Pennsylvania, it was 532,000 more votes.
That is it's mind-boggling. I mean, when you think about it, that's 1 million more voters when you put Republicans and Democrats together. I mean, Democrats won that race alone, but that's just an unbelievable, increase in voters in Pennsylvania.
It was from about 6 million voters to about 7 million voters in 4 years. And so when you look at the top line, you think, oh, okay, Trump barely won it, by 0.7, and Biden barely won it by 1.2. It's just a very mild swing because it's such a swing state. that really obscures the fact that there was a massive get out the vote effort from both sides that was wildly successful. So as we look to 2022, the big questions are, is that Trump vote still going to turn out and vote? Are we going to get a lot of those first-time voters to turn out and vote? And so 2022 is not going to be a question of let's convince people that Democrats should take control of the Senate or not. It really is going to come down to, do each of the sides get their respective bases to turn out and vote? And there's going to be drop off.
I'm gonna throw. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No.
There's gonna be drop off.
No, I'm sure
there's nothing like cutting you off mid-sentence, Markos. It just feels like power to me. No, I'm kidding. So, but I am going to challenge this narrative just slightly, just a slight, not really a challenge, a slight tweak. Is that one of the remaining questions too? Is whether the defections of the suburbs from being a GOP base to being more democratically oriented also matters. So, do we get out those young voters, but do we continue to attract some of those? It's less persuasion, but the element is still slightly there, I think, because the suburbs have made such a difference in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Anyway.
Yeah. So now, going on further, laying this sort of playing field, is that there are open seats in the governor's race, which is currently held by a Democrat, and in the Senate, which is currently held by a Republican. We have a 50-50 Senate. Every battleground race is in a battleground state. Control of the Senate is not assured for Democrats. In fact, there's a very real possibility we may lose it. But there's also a very real possibility we may win 3+3+4 seats. If everything goes well, we have a Manchin and Sinema proof majority in the Senate. If things don't go so well, we either may have status quo, more 50-50, and Joe Manchin and Sinema for another 2 years, or we may actually lose control of the Senate. It is on a razor's edge. And Pennsylvania is one of our best opportunities, because it's an open seat, one of our best opportunities to pick up a seat from the Republicans. In the governor's race, this is very important, because in 2010, Republicans had the trifecta. They had everything. So they were able to enact one of the most aggressive gerrymanders in the entire country, and they've had big legislative majorities as a result. And there's been some tweaking by the courts, but they still have a pro-GOP. Now, what we have, and we'll talk to our guest a little bit more about this, because I'm assuming she's better versed on the topic than I am. But as I understand it right now, the governor, the Democratic governor, can veto the legislature's maps, which would then kick it to a judge. And odds are good that judge will, draw a much more fair map than whatever the Republicans had in 2010 than what we have now.
I assume that kicks to a straight state judge, right?
As I understand it, Democrats will want to kick it to a state judge, because Democrats have a 5-2 majority in the state Supreme Court. Republicans will want to kick it to a federal judge, because Republicans have a majority in the U.S. Supreme Court, right? So again, I'm not sure who wins that battle, and maybe our guest has stuff to tell us about that. But what it does mean is that we have an opportunity, depending on what the maps are drawn, to actually have the trifecta. We can win the governorship, we can win the state legislature, which would, everywhere we've done this, wonderful things happen, including increased access to the ballot box. But we're starting to speculate a little bit here when we have our guests available. So why don't we just bring her on, and then we can actually talk about these topics with her. So our guest today is Jamie Parapatto. She is the executive director of Turn PA Blue, an organization dedicated to flipping the Pennsylvania state legislature by training and mobilizing grassroots groups and volunteers to support candidates in Southeastern PA and presumably the rest of the state as well. Yep. Jamie.
Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, it's such a pleasure.
I'm such a fan. I'm so excited to be here.
We have been having such an amazing time talking to organizers on the ground. And I want to take this opportunity, Jamie, just to remind everybody that funding and donating to organizations doing grassroots organizing on the ground at this stage of the game is the best political money you will ever donate. Nothing
100%.
else comes close. Nothing 100%. Else comes close. everybody, about a couple months before the election, everybody, these campaigns are raising tens of millions of dollars. That money's just going into TV ads. It's being pissed away. It's wasted money.
TV
right
ads
now
aren't even going to air till like a year from now, for a lot of
Jamie,
these reasons.
Tell us what happens when people donate to Turn PA Blue and other organizations like you right now, early in the process.
So what we at Turn PA Blue do, we figure out where the gaps are and we try to fill them. We have a massive amount of volunteers. In 2020, we made 4.5 million calls. Once we were running a COVID election, which I suppose nobody expected, we were able to pivot, and we were able to pivot quickly to take advantage of that. And I think that's the advantage of grassroots groups, is that you are a part of the community, you're a part of the local organizing. So what it's like. In some places, maybe you can canvas, other places you cannot. And we talk to people, and most importantly, we listen to people, and we are able to mobilize super quickly where the work is needed. And that's kind of what we're doing. We're 2 weeks out from an election here in Pennsylvania, and we've got judges on the ballot. We've got Supreme Court, 2 Commonwealth Court seats, which is one of the few places that Trump won lawsuits in the country, was our Commonwealth Court, 2 seats. And we also have a Superior Court judge on the ballot. So, and all these local races, which are more important than anything else, is building trust at the community level with these school boards that are getting brutalized, and county races where if we lose control of the county, the Republicans will take control of the Board of Elections. So this is the year that less people want to pay attention. I feel like we're screaming into the wind. There's a few of us dedicated folks working on 2021, a bunch of tumbleweeds rolling by, a ton of Republicans who are out spending 17-1 here in Planet, Pennsylvania, and trying to put Trump judges on the court. So it's now. If we don't do the work now, when we go to get these districts, to go through the courts, or we try to, protect our voting rights, somebody's going to wish they paid attention in 2021. And 2023 is the same. Those are the years that make or break us in the even years in Pennsylvania.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Because one of the things that I've been paying attention to, as well as many people across the country, are all these Board of Education meetings where people show up and there's a lot of really loud anti-masker, anti-vaxxer types and whatever. But then there's a bunch of people who are like, whoa, what's happening here? This is crazy. Is that on the local level generating any more interest in some of the local elections that are happening than you might think? Yes. Okay.
Yes,
good.
It totally
Tell me about it.
Because, everybody's focused on national politics. No matter what happens, they want to talk about Biden. They want to talk about Trump. We're still the highest engagement we still have in our socials, Pat Toomey, who's not even coming back. He's a horrible person and he's enjoyable to dislike, but, we need to focus on other things. Everybody loves a villain. But now bringing politics home at the local level, where you're, just going about your daily life, watching the news and trying to figure out, what's happening in the world. And all of a sudden you realize, who are these lunatics that live in my committee, who live in my community? We have school boards where in Bucks County, we had militia members that were coming to take all the open comment spots so that people could not take them, so they could just rant and rave at the school board. We had massive book bannings going on. People are amazed to realize that this stuff exists in their communities.
And Bucks County is a major suburb, right? That's a big get for either party.
Yeah, it's where we still have a Republican in Congress, Brian Fitzpatrick, the so-called moderate, where there's no such thing as a moderate Republican, but I suppose that's another podcast. But it's the thick of it. We're doing really well in the suburbs, but Bucks County is one of the collar counties. We still have a Republican in Congress. So I think that this is helping us thread the needle to people understand, my spiel was always the elections that affect you most on a daily basis are the ones that people voted the least. If you don't like how you get a weird surcharge on your water, or you hate how they take out your trash or remove your snow, you're probably not voting in that election. That's the stuff that happens. And then you bring it up with judges when everybody's lamenting over Texas. We are Governor Wolf's pen away from being Texas here in Pennsylvania. We passed a heartbeat bill twice, and he vetoed it twice. We had a fetal remains bill that passed that means women have to intern and get death certificates for their miscarriages. Like Pennsylvania is, we are lucky to have this governor. I mean, people think we're in better shape because we do have a Democratic governor, but, they try to find around it. You know them. They mold into like different things. And now they're trying to legislate by constitutional amendment, which the governor cannot veto. So they're, trying to pack all these amendments into every bill they can, most of which affect voting rights and other things. And that's where it's coming on every side. But people are starting to realize, wow, this is happening at home. And they're engaged.
So Republicans are like the COVID virus, right? It's destructive and it keeps molding into something new to evade countermeasures. Yeah.
What variant is that? I don't know if I'm going to say, but yeah. But that's what it's like.
Yeah. So one of your major focuses, at Turn PA Blue is obviously the state legislature. And so we have a state big elections coming up next year. We don't know what those lines look like yet. Could you tell us a little bit about the redistricting process and what are the chances that we may get maps that make the state legislature competitive?
We are in a unique situation because we have an independent commission that is deciding the lines. So I feel like we already won because if we get fair lines, like I can't even imagine running on fair lines. We run on the worst lines ever. In 2018, we were 25,000 votes from flipping both chambers. That's how close we were. I can't even talk about it, especially knowing what 2020 brought. It's like, it's trigger alert.
It hurts right here. It hurts.
Yeah, I know it. Please, I wake up about it. And so it was right there for us at 2018, and 2020 was definitely a lesson in the fact that, a lot of these Republican voters are off the grid and we don't know if they're turning out or not. The one thing that I do take a little pleasure in is I follow all the Republican committees local. We have to know what's going on the ground on the most micro local level, or we can't help up top of the ticket. And, they have tortured the right to vote. They're torturous about vote by mail. They could not trash it enough, and we're crushing them in vote by mail. So I've seen them post on like Republican committee of Chester County, and they're like, "Get your vote by mail ballot." And they're like, "How could you say that? That's why Trump lost." So their own people turn against him for vote by mail. So I do love it. I'm a horrible math person, but we have, I guess, 620,000 applications from Democrats and maybe the mid 150,000s for Republicans. In a low turnout election like this, that could make or break it. And, we just got vote by mail here. We got vote by mail for the 2020 primary. So we've had it for COVID primary, where we were in the thick of it, like at June 2020. And then we had biggest turnout election ever in the history of time, vote by mail election. And then we had 2021 primary, which is the tumbleweed. No one cares, except for a few key races around the state. So we really haven't had a chance to take this thing out for a drive, but the indicating signs are, it's popular. It's popular with Democrats.
And vote by mail is, you have to apply for it every year, or once you get a vote ballot by mail? You have to
apply for it every year. Okay. If you get on the annual list, we like to make things super confusing in Pennsylvania. Yeah. So if you're on the annual list, that doesn't mean you get a ballot every year. It means you get notification that you need to apply for your ballot every year. Oof. So needless to say, sometimes voters are confused. So I think that the Republicans regret giving us that, regret Act 77, because it was bipartisan. It was their bill. And now they're trying everything they can to dismantle it.
Yeah. Let me just piggyback off of something you were talking about, which is, watching the Republicans kind of tear each other apart on stuff like vote by mail.
This is Carrie's favorite thing to talk about.
It is sweet, isn't it?
It's so fun.
So one thing I'm wondering on a little bit of a macro level is how much Trump is sort of pulling the party apart there. I mean, he's already weighed in and endorsed Army vet Sean Parnell for the U.S. Senate race. It doesn't seem like there was any vetting done. I mean, I'm not saying that Sean Parnell. Yeah, sorry.
Well, we just had the gag order released on his PFA. So, maybe there was vetting. There could have been vetting where, we're going to go with the domestic abuser. He's worked for us in the past. May as well stick with what we know. But who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, right. So there's that. And he's, bullied the state legislature into doing one of these Arizona style audits that didn't work out so great in Arizona, by the way. But it seemed like your state, the state Republicans were kind of avoiding that as of last year, doing this audit, and then Trump went full on aggressive against Pennsylvania lawmakers, Wisconsin lawmakers. He's on a tear against Michigan lawmakers. Like, what is his presence like there? He doesn't have this Twitter presence anymore, but he seems to be touching every piece of what's happening in Pennsylvania, from what I can tell.
He has such an impact on that party that they have to appease the base. They have to appease Trump's base. And that's hard, because we've been taking out moderate. I have to air quote moderates. Every time I say moderate,
yes,
I'm steering and air quoting. We've taken out the moderate Republicans, a lot of them in the Southeast. We have 13 members of the House who where Biden won, that are held by Republicans. We have 6 seats held by Republicans where Biden won also in the Senate, state Senate. So, there was some ticket splitting here, but you can see what's going on in their caucus. Like, they're having we just get slaughtered. When we started, we were on the wrong side of the supermajority. Now, we're still in the minority unless there's infighting. We really can't get anything to the floor. We don't even know what's on the calendar. It's trying to find out, what are they going to go after this week? Are they going to mess with trans kids? Are they going to cut healthcare? What's your flavor of evil of the week? We don't usually know till after it happens, but they're trying to appease their base, knowing that Pennsylvania is, I think the electeds in Pennsylvania are far Trumpier than the voters. So I think that's interesting to see what happens with them. At any times there's chaos. It's great. And chaos is coming in the form of Senator Doug Mastriano, who's at the head of the fraudit. He likes to pride himself on, he was at the White House with Trump when he found out he had COVID. You cannot make this up. Yeah. And then Scott Perry. So they're insurrectionists, proud insurrectionists. And he's been banned from his own caucus. They can't get him under control. And some of these people are so out there that it does create problems for them. So it's definitely fun to watch them struggle.
Yeah. And the Senate Republicans are trying to get the voter information via subpoena of every voter, the personal information of every voter in the state. I mean, that audit is, whatever is going on with that audit is crazy. So, I mean,
it's so crazy, and it's so time consuming and wasteful. But the other hand, who supports that? Nobody supports that. The election's over. Nobody wants their personal information broadcast, certainly to the Republicans. And to do what? We've been through this a million times. So, it's just more chaos. They're not interested in governing. They're interested in furthering Trump's grudges, his ideology. We have a large majority of the Pennsylvania population has received 1 shot. And like I said, I'm terrible with numbers. I think we were about up to 70%. So people believe that COVID is real. People are taking precautions against it. This crazy nonsense, people are struggling here in Pennsylvania. We have a lot of, our minimum wage is still $7.25. We can't pass anything. We had a bill that went through the legislature. We have no Equality Act, and even worse, they were dealing with some bill, and the definition of obscenity included homosexuals. And one of the this is not even but it was under the definition of obscenity. So the Democrat put an amendment and said, "Hey, can we at least remove homosexuals as obscenity?" It failed. We couldn't even get the moderates to vote for it. It's bonkers, and the harder they dig in, the less. They're not interested in governing. They're just not. I mean, we have a ton of problems here. We have a lot of the American Rescue Act funding that's tied up here because we can't get it out, because the legislature refuses to move on it. So it's people are looking for government.
Nothing says forward leaning like debating the word homosexual. Anyway, I just have to say that.
Yeah.
Jamie, I have so many questions, but every time you talk, something else gets in the way. And I'm just so really curious when you're talking about how just out there this Republican legislature is. And earlier we alluded to sort of the changing suburbs, and that was a big factor in being able to win the state in 2020. Does this state level craziness have an impact on voters in the suburbs that may be, sort of right-leaning historically, but have been voting more and more Democratic because of their higher education? Is that a factor, or is the sort of state-level stuff too under the radar for most people to see?
It's not under the radar anymore because it has made national news. Like Scott Perry was just in national. We're always in the national news. We're probably a ton on like talk shows and like getting mocked on like Jimmy Kimmel and stuff.
I mean,
like
you're no Florida, but
no, we're no Florida. Let's just say. But yeah, I mean, I think it's brought
only because Governor Wolf isn't Ron DeSantis. But anyway, sorry, go ahead. Saved by a Democrat. All right, sorry.
Please, you run out of ink on that pen, so that veto pen. So all the crazy stuff that comes by, we're like, what is that? What is that bill? Like, who even heard of it? But yeah, I mean, it's making national news. Like Doug Mastriano is forcing himself into the public eye. The feud between Jay Corman. I think Trump has been. I don't know where he talks now, where he says mean stuff about people, but eventually it gets, maybe he tells a buddy and they like pass it along. But he has been going after Corman, who's a president of the Senate, Republican. Who's horrible. One of our state senators is a great clip that we should talk about, which was Senator Katie Muth, who is one of our most progressive members of the Senate, was trying to save general assistance program where they're cutting, taking these massive per diems, but cutting, I don't even know what it was, like the $50 or $20 they give. And she went toe to toe as Jake Corman screamed over her. You can find that clip, screamed over her. Like every face of his is like this nasty, monstrous face. There's no shame among them. They're not trying to pretend they're anything other than what they are. Some of that stuff is tone deaf. I mean, you're just really talking about struggling people who do not want to waste their time on another audit over who won this election.
So let's say we get fair maps and, we have the open governor's race. There's no illusions at Daily Kos that next year is going to be a tough year, right? Mm-hmm. Joe Biden's numbers are dropping, even more so in battleground states amongst independents. You have the stymied agenda because of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. It's creating a sense of malaise. It almost starts feeling like the ACA battle of 2010. And we're not quite there yet, but the elements are there. So I don't want any illusion that 2022 is going to be an easy year. No. But let's say that we do manage to retain the governorship and win the state legislature. What would that mean both for Pennsylvania and for 2024, the presidential election in 2024?
I mean, the sweeping changes we can enact if we had the majority. Like I said, our minimum wage is $7.25 an hour here in Pennsylvania. We are, for a time there, 49th in the country. What it was of women representation. We were one of the highest in the country of education inequity. Like the difference between the highest paid per student, per school district versus the low. We're usually on every list that's a bad list. And we're on very few lists that are the good list. But one of the lists we're on that's a good list is vaccinations. Like people here want COVID behind them. COVID is the top of the issue in all the polling. And then it kind of dovetails into education and jobs, which are essentially also related to COVID because our education system is our childcare system in this country. There's no money here for, they've been underfunding education in Pennsylvania, something horribly. And they took a hit in COVID and you could see the inequity in some of the places where they were not able to get up and running virtually. Passing infrastructure is vital here. I don't know how we go on past into 22 and beyond if we don't get an infrastructure bill. I mean, Pennsylvania is crumbling. I don't think they've passed an infrastructure bill in, I don't know how, if ever. I mean, since we've had, cars, I don't even know when the last time they have, they don't, there's just no interest in governing. There's no interest in helping people. It's this crazy circular ideology. Like, I'm sure we're going to see another gun bill. I was on another call and it was with somebody's like, so how close is Pennsylvania to, passing common sense gun legislation? I started cracking up. On the common sense gun legislation, we are more likely to get a gun for every baby, like upon their birth, than we are to get any sort of common sense gun legislation. There's no common sense, any kind of legislation here. And I think people are waking up to it because COVID kind of opened up people. It was like civics the hard way, because now you know what your school board does. Now you know, wow, I have a crazy governor. Oh, I got the good governor. People I don't think they realized what their governor did and their county commissioners. And so it kind of, pulled the curtain back to people see who they're governing by. And most people are like, holy crap, these people are crazy. So, I think that in that sense, like, hopefully they'll keep going. I hope that their nominee is as crazy and Trumpy as possible, like Governor Wolf's opponent in 2018, Scott Wagner. known for trying to wanted to beat people with his golf shoe. I think it was the governor he wanted to be. I can't remember exactly who he. Yeah, so he was a charmer. But that's what they're like. They're just insane. So I don't know if their base can get anybody remotely reasonable through. I doubt it. If there's even any left.
So let's get into some of these grassrootsy questions, because there you are. How did Democrats manage to turn out an extra 500,000 people, or more than that actually, in 2020 than in 2016? I mean, it's partly vote by mail, maybe? What else?
Vote by mail is a huge piece of it. 70% of the votes, I mean, I have to double check, 40% of the votes cast for Biden were by mail in Pennsylvania. People like it. Who knew that when you make voting accessible, people are going to vote? It's shocking. It is shocking. But that's what, and people were happy to have it. And it came at COVID, during COVID, at a time where people were worried about it. People love it. And I think that was one piece of it. And it's, here's the other top secret thing. You talk to voters. You don't talk to television screens. You don't have commercials that talk around people who knows if they're using their Peloton when your $5 bazillion commercial comes on. But when you're actually having a conversation with somebody, that they are going to ask you their questions, you listen, you talk. And that's what we did. I mean, the extent we were able to knock, we did, but mostly we did phones and we did texting, and people were responsive. They answered their phones. We did 4.5 million calls and listened. We did amazing. My favorite program was this women to women phone bank. So we were basically, asking women to volunteer. Like, you don't need to have a PhD in political science. You just need to care about this. This needs to be personal to you. And you need to call another woman, any place in Pennsylvania, urban, suburban, rural, and talk about why it matters to you and see what matters to them. And these are real, honest, human conversations. I was at an event this weekend. When you cut a turf or you have a list, like, those are human beings on the list. They're people who have their own lives. They could be taking care of, their parents and their children, which a lot of people are doing now. There's people who have their own life and their own stories. They want to tell them. They want to be heard. And that's what we have to do, is listen to people.
Do you feel like there was, just to follow up on that real quick, and then I'll shut up and Markos can ask a question, but do you feel like there was a particular demographic or a particular area of Pennsylvania that was really responsive, where you saw the registrations go up between 2016 and 2020?
Well, voter registration is a problem here in Pennsylvania, and it continues to be. That is one issue. But I think one of the things that was the most impressive to me is the margins. Like these counties, a lot of the rural counties where, it is, my favorite quote is, "There's nothing out here besides Republicans and land." And they showed up. They increased their margins. Like, that's what put us over the top, is these little places where that overperformed and worked their butts off to get this vote out and to make Democrats feel like they're not alone and that they were here. And, they're painting barns and they're having signs and they're working. And that's what it is. If you look at these places, the purple and red places, that's what impressed me the most, is the fact that, people were a part of this. They wanted to be a part of it. And it was everybody did their part. That's the thing that was amazing. We launched a big rural program. We started in the Southeast because that's where we live. And that's where most of the votes are, right outside of the Philadelphia. We call the collar counties. But, as the need arose and nobody was doing the work, like, we're statewide now. We're running the statewide vote by mail program for 2021. It is like being on a bucking bronco, because our DOS has, infrastructure is not just roads and bridges. Infrastructure is how you operate all your systems. We've had huge problems with unemployment benefits. The Department of State is like woefully, antique. I like to say it's like run on a speak and spell in a Commodore 64 with a dot matrix printer. Like, it's what we're dealing with infrastructure wise as far as technology is terrible here. But we managed to pull it off, and people care. People really, really care. And that's the thing. And you can't forget that they're voters. These are people, they're not just numbers. They're not just on your list. They're humans with human stories who want to hear what you have to say, but mostly they want to tell you what their concerns are and what they want to say.
First of all, Kerry, you never have to shut up. And I don't even want to hear you suggest that I would ever want you to shut up. We are talking to Jamie Parapatto of Turn PA Blue. Her organization, as we just found out, is in charge of all the vote by mail in program in Pennsylvania, a program that accounted for 40% of Joe Biden's vote. That's why it's so important at this point to support organizations that are doing this kind of work on the ground. This will matter more than anything you will ever donate to. I promise you, this is better money than any other possible way you can spend it in politics. Jamie, 500,000, as we've been saying, 500,000 new voters turned out, at least 500,000 more voters turned out than 2016. I don't know. Do we know how many of those are new? I'm not sure. Presumably a lot of them. But so the question is, how do we get them to turn out in 2022? What are you guys doing to try to reach out to these new voters, not the existing voters? We all know that once a voter votes a couple of times, it becomes sort of muscle memory.
That's what's exciting. That's what's super exciting, as bleak it is over here in Pennsylvania. For the vote by mail program, we've been signing up voters. 50% of the people that we have signed up did not vote in 2019. 50%.
Nice.
Wow.
So once again, the silver bullet of making voting accessible makes people vote. Oh my goodness, like who would have thought? And I think that's what's interesting. And we're trying to get people in the habit. We have new voters. You're in the habit. You have to vote twice a year, every year. And mail-in ballot helps you do that. It helps you maintain remembering when it is. I was with my friends this morning. Who thought the election was a week later than it was, and I'm like, oh my God, you're my stupid friends, and you don't even know when you. But that's what it is. It's just having more communication and talking to people on the ground. Like, that's why these local races are important. We had a lot of success with Biden at the top of the ticket. And I think a lot of that was driven by us at the bottom of the ticket, but it didn't fare well for us. I mean, we lost a seat in the Senate and we broke even in the House. We didn't gain any ground despite having a robust field program. Like the House caucus and the Senate caucus did a great job, but it just didn't translate for us. It's down on the ballot. And it's because people trust what they know. And they're like, oh, this is a great constituent. He gives out candy at the parade. And we used to have parades. And, every time there's a pothole, I call them and they fix it. Except for the fact that your good friend gets on a bus, a train to Harrisburg and votes for the most restrictive abortion bill in the country and is like, enacting bills to mess with trans kids, whenever they get it's their suits, they're fancy. So it's disgusting, it's disgusting what they do. And by trying to shine a light on what is happening at the state legislature and putting Democrats in front of them at the local level that they can trust. This is my neighbor. He's a Democrat. I've never voted for a Democrat, but my neighbor doesn't seem to have horns or be giving out money to everybody on the side of the street or whatever else we do. We don't killing babies or whatever we're accused of doing, pedophilia. Wow, he looks awful normal. So these are your neighbors that are voting for these things. They're voting for families. They're voting for working people. They're voting for kids. And they start to see that, we're not the same, because people say, oh, it's politics. Both sides are equally bad. Like, no, they're not. They're not anymore. Not when you're backing white supremacists and, fostering hate and trying to, dismantle our democracy, which is the most frightening thing about it.
And spread the pandemic. I mean, this is what I keep.
That's still happening. I thought we were over that.
No. There's still. Listen, there's still legs to the pandemic, and Republicans are trying to make it possible for more spread, more death and destruction. So,
So, Kerry, hold on once. I just want to do a quick follow-up here. I'm really sort of struck by the fact that the vote by mail, even though it's not as expansive as, say, Oregon, Washington, California, Colorado, even Utah, right, where you automatically get a ballot. It seems like this is a very big plus for Democrats, but it was passed on a bipartisan basis because there's nothing inherently partisan about vote by mail. In fact, it was pioneered by Florida Republicans to make it easier for their older white base to turn out and vote without having, because they're older and less mobile. So it was easier for them to vote without having to stand in line at the polls. And Trump has, first of all, they killed it in Florida, thanks to Trump. And it sounds like you have what should be a sort of great equalizer type of program in vote by mail. And Democrats are like, heck yeah, let's do it. And we're all in. And then there are the Republicans just completely undermining that tool as a way. So they have to not only put all their eggs in the election day basket, but then they also have to deal with the fact that their voters are older. It's harder for them to vote. some of them may actually die before the election, before that vote gets cast. There's so many ways that this can go wrong. And so I guess my question to you then is are Republicans, you say that the state party is actually trying to push against this and running up against a wall with their constituents? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen on social, like if a county party is like, don't forget the last day to sign up for your mail-in ballot is October 26th. And you'll see like, when I see like 171 comments or something, I'm like, oh, I'm going to read all these. They're like livid. How could you even say that? How could you even suggest that we vote by mail? Because before we had vote by mail, we have a very restrictive absentee ballot program, which it had to be a health concern, and you had to provide, notation from your doctor, or you had to be out of the district and sign a test that you were not going to be in the district that day. Which, anybody who's traveling last minute for work or who does shift work or, whatever happens, they might not have access to the polls. So this is just, it makes people have access. You can get your ballot, you can go in, apply for your ballot, fill it in right there and hand it right back. And people want to vote. It's just making it accessible for people to do so. So they have painted themselves in a corner with vote by mail, which is why every single thing they do is trying to dismantle it here in Pennsylvania. They thought the big get was we had to give up straight ticket voting. So you used to be able to just tick the box and you voted for everybody. So we gave that up. I do think it had somewhat of an effect on us down ballot in 2020. But, that's the Trump election. There's a lot of things to say about how that was. That was all about him. But yeah, they have painted themselves into a corner, and also like the mistrust of government. So they are, by dismantling, the government, which is what they want to do. I mean, you can even say like the Tea Party, as screwed up as they were at least trying to function within our existing democracy and do their weird stuff that way. But now they want to dismantle the entirety of the government. So they're getting to the point where there are people believe all of these crazy conspiracy theories that they hear. We have a lot of Pennsylvania that doesn't have broadband. So these are people that are sitting there with Fox News being indoctrinated all the time. And what kind of opposing viewpoints do they hear? So, it's a really mixed bag here. And like I said, they really have shot themselves in the foot with this vote by mail thing, because it is wonderful for us. I mean, we're reaching new voters, and 50% did not vote in 2019. These are small margins, especially 21. That's the judges. That's not even the control of the counties. Because that's the other thing in Pennsylvania. I'm sure, I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but the majority in the county controls the Board of Elections. So when the Democrats are the majority, we make voting accessible. We have drop boxes, we have extended hours, there's like voter protection. They try to do all of these things to make voting easier for people. And then in the case of Republicans, they can play games where they delay the ballots going out. And a lot of them have drop boxes, but it's in the Board of Elections that's only open at the same time as the Board of Elections. So I guess you can avoid standing in line inside your Board of Elections, but they don't have that. Sadly, we have some situations with Democrats who are not holding up their end of the bargain. I think one of the things that worries me most about 21, Allegheny County, this is the western part of the state, Pittsburgh. They love to vote by mail in Allegheny County, and they love judges. And at the last time I looked, which I don't even know if I've slept in days, but whatever day that was, it was like 127,000 of the 600,000 were applications by people in Allegheny County whose ballots went out late. They just started going out Thursday, and they have no drop boxes. And our Democratic county executive, in a very, Biden won by 20 points, I think, in Allegheny County, said we have drop boxes on every corner. They're called mailboxes. This is the Democrat. So we have to hold everybody accountable, because this is not, and if, for those keeping score at home, his name is Ritz Fitzgerald. So you can give him a call and tell him that we don't like vote suppressing voters on our side or any side. But that's the thing. The access to vote is the key to this. If our voters cannot vote, that is the problem. And they're restricting access to their own voters by just, by creating chaos around the electoral system. People are voting because they don't think their vote matters. And I hope they've gone so far over the edge that, their voters are like, what's the point? It's fixed anyway. Maybe, who knows? Who knows what brand of crazy is going through there now. But accessible.
Kerry, you're muted.
I'm back. In that vein, there was a after the Georgia Senate runoffs, where there was depressed turnout among Republican voters, specifically Trump voters, actually, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution did an analysis of the voter rolls, and Markos and I were DMing about it recently because I linked to it in an article, and he said, "Look at this voter here. I mean, this voter literally said, hey, why even vote? They said that my vote didn't count and things got changed. So why would I even vote? I didn't vote in the Senate runoffs, and you really, like, it turns out if you tell all your voters that the system is a sham, like, maybe they're not going to get, they're going to divest from the system. I mean, it's like, okay.
It seems like an odd strategy to tell people their vote doesn't matter when you're trying to get their vote. I don't understand. They definitely outfox us a lot. So maybe something I'm missing here, but that's what it is. And it's democracy on the ballot. And voters think we're dramatic. They're like, oh, the Democrats again, they're complaining that democracy, we're going to lose our country. This is for real. Like, this is for reals. This is, the longest standing democracy there is, and eroding away people's rights that they don't really even pay attention to. It's terrifying. I'm terrified about the boards of elections because we help with the voter protection team. We have a new director for voter protection. She's fantastic. She's trying to get up and running quickly to answer voter questions for 2021. We want everybody to be able to vote. We go above and beyond. Our volunteers go above and beyond. My organizing director was exhausted today because she couldn't sleep because she wanted to quality control all the drop boxes locations because they weren't right on any of the websites. So she was up all night doing that. Like, our volunteers care, and that's what our piece is. When I say we bring it in the community, we're a constant. We don't go away. We're here for every special election. We're here for the magistrate races. We're here for the school boards. We're here for the top of the ticket. We have relationships with local committees. We find out, what do they need? What do you guys want to do? How can we help? And that's what we do. So we have this coalition of people, and we have great volunteers from out of state. We have a dedicated base of volunteers that alternates between us and Virginia. They're with Virginia right now. I'm glad they are. And they come back to us and they understand the importance of it. People who will deal with voter protection and who will call our voters. And we're calling voters who had problems with their mail-in ballots and problems voting last time, saying, what was the problem? How did you didn't get your ballot back? How can we best help you? Do you think it's better for you to go to the polls, or we can offer you assistance, getting someone to help you with your ballot? So, that's what it is, just making people accessible. And that's kind of what we're working. People really, and Democrats are partisan for a change. That's the thing that's amazing me, is they're like, I don't even care. Just tell me what to do. What do you need me to do? Just vote for the Democrats. That's it. Like, easy. Should I vote?
Are there a couple of websites, and it could be your own, but that you suggest people going to if they're confused about when to vote, or what the basics are of the next election, et cetera?
We have a voting center on our website that we're constantly working on updating. And we are, it's constantly changing because all the counties control their own, the voting. So that's
what's your web address?
Yeah. So on social media, we have the voter protection hotline. We've been texting voters reminding them to return their ballots. And that's kind of turned into an exercise in voter protection. We had a big brouhaha about stamps. Like, some people had to have 2 stamps, and, my bougie county paid for the postage. So, it's just a lot of confusion. This is like 3 states, squished together. 3 states that have nothing to do with one another, squished together.
What are these states called?
I don't know. States of confusion, chaos. Regression. I don't know.
What's your web address? What's the
turnpablue.org, and on there you can find all the ways you can all the opportunities to volunteer. So we have text banking, we have phone banking, and these phone banking are due to landlines and older voters. Like, we have an amazing contact rate. They're slow. We go through the process and we're patient with everybody. We're canvassing, which is so fun to be back out in the world again. And, whatever we can do in the off years, we educate and train people. And that's the point of our organization, is we want to be here all the time. So we know, you have somewhere to go, and we train our volunteers. They're smart, they're dedicated. This means something to them. It's personal. We don't want anybody to ever try to volunteer and not have the opportunity. And it can be daunting. Not that like people who are involved in politics get a little snooty with their opinions and things like that. People are scared. They're scared they don't know enough. Oh, I couldn't possibly canvass because I don't know enough. You don't need to know enough. You need to care, and you need to tell your story to other people who probably have a similar story to you. And that's all it is. And we want to make political volunteering accessible to people so that they don't feel, that it's not something for them, because it's something for everybody. And that's who we need. We don't need all the experts at the doors. We need regular people who are telling personal stories. And that's
Jamie, you made a great point earlier that okay, it's the most important election again, but it really is, right? Once upon a time, it was a debate between more taxes and more government services and less taxes for billionaires, and that was the end of it, right? Now we're really fighting.
Republicans, remember them?
Yeah, this is now a fight for our democracy. It legitimately is, and there's no hyperbole in saying that, and it's effing terrifying that it matters so much. It's not a question of whether Social Security is going to be properly funded anymore. This really cuts to the core of what we are and who we are as a nation. That's why donating to organizations like Turn PA Blue is so incredibly important and gratifying. And look, you're helping support people that are engaged in their democracy and are making calls and knocking on doors and getting people to vote by mail. This is incredibly important work. Don't waste your money by donating to a campaign that will spend it on TV ads. There's plenty of they'll get that money. And
I have not personally seen a TV ad in like 5 years. Unless someone emails it to me or texts it to me. It's very easy to avoid. Yeah. Commercials.
No, absolutely. So we're running close to the end of the show. So I do want to ask you before we go, we have an open Senate race in Pennsylvania. This is going to be the only path for a Manchin and Sinema approved Senate runs through Pennsylvania. How are you feeling about that open Senate race?
A lot of things have to fall into place. I think one of the benefits that we have is we do not have a contested primary in our governor's race. So our Attorney General, Josh Shapiro, is running for governor. And so we don't have to wait for the primary to be over to start work. We can start work. We started work this weekend, as a matter of fact. Great. And the other thing that's incredible about Josh is Josh has held office at every level of government. So working with somebody who is, a good person and is good at politics and understands why we need to win our local commissioner races all the way up to the top. And it's fantastic. So we actually get a jump on it with the governor's race. So we get to go to work already without a primary. And then by the time the primary unfolds, we'll be able to move, we'll be able to move closer.
The Senate primary. Yeah.
The primary. Yeah. Right. And, so, we have four great candidates. I don't know, I'm always amazed what Pennsylvania thinks. And, we go back and forth on that all the time as to who's going to come out of it. And you can see it a million different ways. I don't know, but I think we're in good shape, because I think that the message that we're sending as Democrats is message that we're trying to work for people. We're working for the American people and the people of Pennsylvania, and they're doing crazy nonsense. Like, we don't have time for crazy nonsense. Everybody's tired. Everybody wants to go back to the cruddy life they had in 2019. That's what you're looking for. I'm like, I just want it to be as crappy as 2019. I joke, but there's people suffering here. It's needless. It is needless what happens in Pennsylvania. There just is no reason for it to be governed the way it is. And thank God for Governor Wolf and his veto pen, because we would be in way worse shape. Like, we'd be just right alongside with Texas, no doubt.
As far as I can tell, Republicans do have some, top tier candidates in the governor's race, but nothing in the Senate race. Is that true? It looks like a bunch of
well, I don't know. It's hard to tell. Like, some of them, like, I would love to bring like Lou Barletta back. I really did enjoy that the first time we ran against Lou Barletta, because he's crazy and he's a terrible candidate also. So I don't know. It's just a matter of how much power the base has and how far to the right they're going to push their nominee. The crazier they are, the better it is for us. I'll tell you that.
That, as I mentioned earlier, Trump's endorsed Sean Parnell. And that is going to be a messy race, because you were talking about the gag order on, there was some sort of restraining order or whatever.
Yeah, against him. Custody hearing, there was a PFA issued in the case, and he wanted a gag order.
What is a PFA?
Protection from abuse order.
Yeah, okay.
Restraining order is a clue.
Right, by his wife, his ex-wife.
And he doesn't want his wife to talk about it, but his wife seems quite interested. So that's chaos. That's side of the aisle. I don't know what they do with that now.
Right, that's chaos, and they're already, and one of his GOP opponents is already trying to, make that a big issue, right? So that's going to be a messy primary on the right for the Senate seat, for the open Senate seat.
And if they spend down on their primaries, that only helps us. Like I said, in this 2021 year with the judicials on the ballot, we hold the majority in the Supreme Court. So when the redistricting fights go up to the Supreme Court, we have judges that are interested in fair maps. So, once we get through the independent commission, it goes to court, we should be fine insofar as we're trying to get rid of the gerrymander, which is not even legal, especially the way they do it. But they're fighting us every step of the way, and we're getting outspent 17-1 right now. So the more they spend down, the better. I know they print money like it's nothing in their evil, their evil castle or whatever they do. I don't know how they get it. Evil money tree. I don't know, but they just seem to have way more of it than we do most of the time. So.
Jamie Parapatto turned PA blue. That's all the time we have. Unfortunately, that was so amazing, and I do hope we can bring you back.
Thanks so much for having me. I love it, and I love I'm so excited to be here. So
this was great.
For joining us.
And I can't tell that you haven't slept in days because you were really hilarious. So I'm glad you had that energy, and I do hope that you have a chance to sleep at some point here.
Wake me when we have new districts and an infrastructure bill.
Yes. Jamie Perrapato turned PA blue. I hope we've made a good, strong case why it's important to support organizations like Turn PA Blue that are doing the on-the-ground organizing and infrastructure building that campaigns that's not their job. That's not what they do. They're there to promote a single person, not to engage people and build a base of support and the infrastructure to support not just the one candidate, but all Democrats, all progressives.
Hallelujah, and build a bench.
Absolutely. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Kerry, I know this is the first one that you've been able to do because you and your family were out sick, but I always feel at the end of each one of these, it's like so energizing to talk to these people that are doing the most amazing work that I can't even begin to express my gratitude for them existing and appreciation for what they do. And so
and in every word that she said, you could just see, the dedication of her and her team to trying to maximize every, minute they have before these court, these judge races in the next couple of weeks. So, you can see the dedication.
Yeah. So I'm not going to say that I'm not going to donate to candidates because, Stacey Abrams is going to run. I'm definitely donating to Val Demings. I mean, I'm not saying don't donate to candidates, especially the great ones.
I think you did say that.
Yeah. Okay. So I am amending myself, but I actually say if you have a limited amount of money, these organizations like We the People of Michigan and Turn PA Blue and the North Carolina Black Alliance, these organizations that we're talking to, and organizations in, your backyards. It doesn't have to be one of these. There are groups doing this kind of work everywhere, and they're chronically underfunded, underappreciated. People don't really focus on them, but their work is what campaigns can then build upon. Their work is what creates a list of 250,000 new vote by mail people that then they can go out and they can solicit again and make sure that they vote by mail again. That's what makes that possible. And so it's easier for the Stacey Abrams and Val Demings. And you know what, Kerry, and we're almost out of time, but Stacey Abrams actually is almost a perfect example. She ran for governor, came up short, likely because of some shenanigan Republicans, but she came up short. And instead of just, okay, I'm going to wait for the next election, she set out to build the infrastructure. That's what Stacey Abrams sort of, give her the Nobel Peace Prize, because that was her real accomplishment. It wasn't running and almost winning, but building the infrastructure that allowed John Ossoff to win and allowed Joe Biden to win and allowed Raphael Warnock to win. And if all goes well, will allow her to win the governor's race next year. So that is what these organizations do. And unfortunately, they don't all have a Stacey Abrams at the top who is charismatic and nationally well known that can raise the big bucks.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm excited this was your idea, Kerry, to really shine a spotlight on these groups doing this kind of important, critical work on the ground in these battleground races that will decide control of the Senate next year and will have an impact on 2024 because voting rights, voting restrictions, all those things are decided at the state level, like all our guests have been explaining.
Right. And I just want to add one thing, which is this is the whole reason we did this series, is that dollar for dollar, every dollar that you give is worth so much more to these organizations than anything you donate in terms of, to the candidates next year and what kind of spending they do. And this is building the bones of democratic infrastructure in every state. So that's why we did this. It's the whole reason we did this, is to get some donations flowing to some of these grassroots groups that were doing the hard work.
Yep. Kerry, that is our show. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you're back. Thank you to Walter Einenkel. Thank you to our guest. I'm
Jamie,
but I forgot. No, her last name. It is Jamie Parapatto. It was easy to mess up. Jamie Parapatto. Thank you to Jamie Parapatto for joining us. And thank you. Did I thank Walter Einenkel for producing the show? Thanks to Walter. So. And thank you for joining us. You can follow along at dailycoast.com, Twitter at dailycoast. Please like us, subscribe in all your favorite podcast places. And thank you for joining us and listening. And we love you. And please support these organizations doing great work on the ground. Love you all. See you next week.